My name is David Fletcher. I work for Vandolah Power Company. We're a simple cycle plant, 680 megawatt simple cycle plant. We have 4 GE 7FA gas turbines. Small plant. We have 10 operators and I&E techs, 6 managerial and administrative personnel. We're located in Wauchula, Florida, which is actually, people know where Disneyland is, or Disney World is in Orlando. We're probably like an hour and a half from that. We're originally built and operated by El Paso Corp. Sold to Northern Star Generation in 2004. El Paso was a huge gas company at the time, and nowadays they're much, much smaller. I believe they're actually purchased by a British entity, from what I recall. So we went commercial in 2002, operated under a power purchase agreement with Reliant, who became RES, who became Genon up until 2012. Now we operate under a tolling agreement with Duke Energy Florida. We average about 355 starts a year in the last 4 years, and we're about 330 lease starts year to date in 2014. So it's a relatively new plant. The technology that came with the plant, unfortunately, is a little bit older because the parts were purchased long before the plant was ever built. So our parent company is Northern Star Generation. You already know we're a small plant. Northern Star is also a small owner. They own, I believe, 7 plants now in the United States, most of which are natural gas combined cycle plants, along with a couple of waste coal plants in Pennsylvania. So we don't have a real big corporate structure to lean on. No one really to speak of in IT except for one person. Not a lot of operations or maintenance support at all. So some of the regulatory agencies I have to report to, this is the biggest reason why we ended up going to Opralog. We have to report to the EPA for our air emissions, FDEP, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, that's air and water, Southwest Florida Management Water District, SWIFMUD, that's water again. Then we have OSHA, with Occupational Safety and Health Administration. NERC, which is a relatively new thing in the States. Basically, they kind of came into the picture in 2007, and I'll get into that a little bit more as far as the challenges that we face with that. And then we also have Florida Reliability Coordinating Council, the FRCC. They're basically our local branch of NERC that tells us what we should be doing. So NERC ended up coming around because of the Northeast blackout that happened in the States and Canada in 2003. Affected an estimated 55 million people across 8 states, including New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Michigan, Maryland, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and the province of Ontario as well, Canada. Just numerous causes were identified, including failure to maintain vegetation along transmission lines, improper reactions and procedures for system events, poor communications between transmission companies, etc. You know, looking at these causes, you kind of see where they're going to start hitting things up. And they were given authority to create and enforce reliability standards to maintain grid reliability in the U.S. and Canada starting in June 2007. I don't believe they have all of Canada right now. I think it's just the eastern section. Along with a small section of Baja, Mexico. And the big thing here is if they find that we're doing something wrong, they can penalize us up to $1 million per day per violation. So there's a real big opportunity lost, we'll call it. So these are the reliability standards they came up with. Balancing and demand balancing, basically make sure the power goes in and out of the proper places. Critical infrastructure protection, the SIP standards, that's basically all security, cybersecurity, physical security, background checks, communications, basically for certain people they require 3-way communications, and our plant we do that anyways. Emergency preparedness and operations. That one's basically looking for, they used to call it sabotage, but now it's not. It's basically for coordinated attacks on the grid, whether it's cyber security, whether it's physical attacks, terrorist attacks. Facilities design, connections, and maintenance, the FACT standards, that's basically saying what you're telling them that you're able to put out, your plant's actually able to produce. There was issues at numerous plants actually where jumpers were not sized to handle the entire load of the plant, and over the course of years and years of running, they ended up wearing them away. And even worse is when you have a relay that's set below what you're able to produce and you lose, 600 megawatts because of improper relay setting. That also shows up in the protection and control standards as well. Interchange scheduling and coordination. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with that, so I'm not too sure what that one is. Modeling, data analysis, the mod standards. This is basically making sure that you're testing things properly. This is going to become a lot bigger here as they're right now in Florida. We're not doing much with this. FRCC is actually pushing, and we're going to have a lot more tests we're going to have to do going forward. Nuclear standards, again, not anything to do with us. We're all natural gas plants. Personnel performance training qualification. This is generally for transmission owners, operators, balancing authorities, ISOs, not really so much with generators. Protection and control, I mentioned earlier, it's basically make sure that your relays are set properly and maintained properly. Transmission operations, we have some small things to do with that, but basically make sure that your lines are maintained the way they should be. Transmission planning, make sure your outages are scheduled properly. And voltage and reactive, basically making sure that your automatic voltage regulator is set up properly, your voltage schedule is being maintained. All right, I actually started up Vandolah in 2002, left in 2007 to go work for a couple different companies, came back in 2012 and saw things basically the same as when I left. A lot of handwritten logs. All of our inspection sheets were handwritten, check sheets, a lot of duplication, a lot of redundancy. The operator's time, I would say probably 25% of their shift was just devoted to keeping track of all this paperwork. And there was little documentation of communication. We did document communications with our transmission owner, transmission operator, balancing authority as need be. But outside of that, inter-shift communications, we never really saw any evidence of that. And then the big thing was just an overabundance of paperwork. When I got there, I think like every day I get like an inch stack full of paperwork every day we ran. And at this point now, after the Opralog implementation, I think it's down to 3 sheets. So that's actually done a lot to free up the operator's time. It's freed up my time. It's been a savior for us so far. So here's the different software that we have right now. We have a CHAMPS CMMS system that we use for work order tracking. We're actually looking at getting rid of this system and replacing it with MainSaver. I'll get into that in a little bit here. We also have Mark V turbo controllers with EX2000 exciters, Innovation Series LCI, which doesn't mean much unless you know the technology that is out there is all Ethernet based. This is ArcNet based. So basically it's a big coax cable connecting everything. There's only so much you can actually pull across. So a lot of our data manipulation has to happen over a PI historian. We have Toolbox SD and Prophecy-based HMIs that were installed in 2011. This was actually due to the same NERC standards again, making sure that we could track cybersecurity. We could log and report any potential cyber attacks that would happen. We have GE Fanuc 9030 and GE 9070 balance of plant controls. These are basically just PLCs, not real DCSs. We're actually looking at upgrading those. And of course the OSIsoft PI historian. And I'll get into that as well. We have a 2010 server that's on the controls network that we're actually trying to communicate with an older NT version of PI. So this way we could have I believe the term is a data diode, a one-way flow of communication between the PI servers. So this way we put our PI server on our corporate network. And then we have a Microsoft Access database for historical operational data. This was something that was basically set up back in 2002, which just tracks all of our starts, factored starts, all reports that go out to the EPA, FDEP, everything's entered into there and comes out through there. All right, so this is what we were looking for when we were looking to basically start bringing all these processes together, and as well as reducing the paperwork more than anything else. We needed better documentation and reporting. If something happened, we needed the ability for people to be notified as soon as possible. Again, we've got basically 16 people that are in charge of this plant, and the quicker we get that communication out there, the quicker people can respond. The next big thing was demonstrating their compliance. We actually just went through a O&P audit September. Came through with flying colors. A lot of it was actually thankfully due to the software and tracking that we had. Unfortunately, since they audited us for the last 7 years, there's also a lot of paperwork that we had to go through. So the amount of paperwork, I believe we ended up, myself personally, I couldn't even imagine. I probably spent close to 200 hours just preparing for this audit. And that was the other thing, reducing the time needed to prepare for data requests and audits. Like I said, we don't have the people to. A lot of bigger companies. Like I said, we work with Duke Energy. They have one person for one standard. I believe there's like 900 and some odd standards now. And we have basically 3 people at our plant that takes care of all those. The other big thing was facilitating communications. One of the problems is when you're doing handwritten logs, when you're communicating with someone, is actually trying to write down what's being said. And there's been a lot of information loss and a few, I won't quite say arguments, but disagreements with our customers. So, and of course, as everyone knows, customers always right, so we have to do whatever they say. Thankfully, we do record our phone logs, so we're able to at least go back and prove what we said. Reducing paperwork and reducing redundancy, basically that's the same thing for us here. It's all about saving time, saving trees. It's just been phenomenal. So here's some of the projects that we've actually had going on in the last year. We upgraded to electronic round software that's storing our data up in the cloud. We're able to pull that down. It actually gets emailed out every day. We're going to change the reporting software at some point because we want more of an exception reporting. No one really needs to know your lube oil temperature every single shift, but if it deviates by 2 or 3 degrees, that tells you something a lot more than actually looking at the number. So we're going to be looking to go to exception-based reporting. Phase 2 was installing the new electronic logbook software. I'll get into the process that we did with that here in a little bit. Phase 3, what we're actually doing now is, what we're doing the beta for right now, is installing a new PI server on a corporate network with one-way data communication from Controls Network PI server. Again, we have to isolate that data. No one from our corporate side is able to get into the Controls Network. Phase 4 is going to be integrating the new PI server with the mobile round software, operational reporting database, and the electronic logbook software. And install new computerized maintenance management software is going to be phase 5. I mentioned that earlier. We're going to be looking at going to MainSaver instead of the CHAMP system that we're using now. We used MP2 in the past, which worked relatively well. We went to CHAMPS, I think back in 2008, more for accounting software for tracking depreciation of costs. Since there's been some accounting changes now within our corporate philosophy, we don't have to do that anymore. So we're going to go to a better CMMS program. And then phase 6, just getting all of that integrated. All right, so our Opralog implementation, we looked at a few different systems, Ventrix, eLog, EdiPro, and Opralog, and as well as some more that we kind of just tossed off right off the bat. The key functionalities we were looking for was ease of use, modular. We didn't want, the full solution right off the bat. We wanted to walk into it because, again, we're shy of the personnel, so we have to be able to do things in steps. Be done with step 1 before we go on to step 2. We wanted the ability to have multiple users. And that was pretty much straightforward. Connectivity, basically the ability for this program that we're going to use to talk to all the other programs that we use. And flexibility. A lot of things come out of the box. They're a little rigid. The more you're able to change on site, the more you're able to actually tailor the software to your needs, the far better off you're going to be. So after ruling out the highest prices and the lowest functionality, we were basically left with EditPro and Opralog. Some of these prices we heard, again, small. This was one plant, one installation. We heard like $250,000. It was just insane, and I think that was for 3 users, actually. We won't mention who that is. But as far as EditPro and Opralog, there were basically 2 different kinds of software. I'd used EditPro before, and for what it did, I thought it was great. Combined cycles, steam plants, things like that where you need constant monitoring of your processes. It was great for that. So far as the actual reporting, the ability of people to actually have different log entries, spelling issues that would come across with EditPro, those negatives eventually just outweighed it. So like I say, EditPro basically had a lot of functions that were not applicable to us. And Opralog's configurability and reporting capability gave us the easiest path to demonstrating that NERC standard compliance. So post-implementation, basically installed the server, ran our old system, handwritten notes, going out doing it the old-fashioned way, and the new system, right-clicking your entries, and train the personnel on them. And basically, I would say most people had it down within a couple weeks. We basically had kind of the same issue with people that didn't want to, conform to the new system. So we had to take away the old system for that to happen. Once we took away their ability to even do what they were doing, everyone fell right in line, and we went from I think 50% approval up to 100% approval once people got used to it. Because it's a whole lot easier right-clicking saying, I calibrated this instrument versus, handwriting it out, emailing the same thing out, and putting it into the work order. There was a lot of modification of our original entries based on O&M feedback. We got some really good feedback. A lot of the ways we thought about things when we implemented the system and broke things out. Like we originally had things broken out just by system, and we broke out maintenance separately because it made a lot more sense to the guys, and it just, again, decreased the amount of time that they were spending there. We created daily reports for turnover and log entries. We had some issues with our mail server, and we still have some issues with our mail server. We've rolled from an old hosted Exchange server now to Microsoft Exchange servers, and the Office 365 isn't quite playing very well right now. So that was last week, so hopefully by next week we'll have that cleared up. So right now we're not really using Opralog for maybe 50% of what we see long-term for us. Basically, we're using unit status for generator availability, data system entry. So we're able to track when the unit's in forced outage, when it's back available, when it's in reserve service. All that's automatically logged. Fire system impairments and performing the necessary notifications. Environmental and safety issues. This all goes back to the regulatory things. Tracking visitors, work performed, and schedule for the next day shift. So every contractor that comes on site, we put their lead name down, and what they did that day and what they're planning to do the next shift they're on. So if it's a full outage and they're running 2 12-hour shifts, then we would just put what the next shift is going to do. Communications with dispatchers, that's been cleaned up tremendously. And transfer of watch stand responsibilities. Now basically everyone has a set series of steps that they go through, and it looks uniform now, whereas before it was a little jagged. Some people would turn over in 15 minutes, some people would turn over in 2 minutes. So we've got that down. They kind of met in the middle. It's probably about 7-8 minutes now. So here's just a couple of quick examples of what we have. Our shift turnover report. basically track and communicate unit start order. We have the ability with our tolling agreement to select which units we want to start, even though our customer actually controls the fuel and controls the power that comes out. So that's, we generally do it based on the starting costs associated with the unit. We have a long-term service agreement with GE, and 2 units are at one price, 2 units are at the other. And of course, depending upon what's enforced outage, what equipment is out of service, we'll alter that as well. We also keep personnel up to date on equipment status changes. And actually, that's probably one of the biggest things, the equipment status notes there that we have. What's in and out of service, everything just carries over, and it's so much easier for them to go in and delete that, add to that, versus going to a whiteboard, or even worse, when they were handwriting it at the start of each shift. We also provide night orders and temporary instructions, which there's none of this on this sheet because I believe this was a weekend. But yeah, any temporary operating instructions we need to pass on, we get that right through here, and night orders for the shift, we'll just throw it right in under management notes. We also keep track of, well, I personally keep track of what I do under the management notes. This way my guys can see what I've done, and if I have any issues, I can always go back and see what I did and what I'm planning on doing the next thing as well. All right, so plant status is logged and communicated by off-going shift right around 15 to 30 minutes prior to shift turnover. Originally, we would have the oncoming shift sign on with the where the plant was at that time. We figured it made more sense when we're doing the turnover to let the off-going shift do that, and this way he could actually make sure that things are where they're supposed to be. There's been a few issues where the oncoming shift would find an issue that unfortunately would have been a lot easier to clean up with the off-going shift. So just by doing this one little step has saved us at least a couple hours of headaches. In the future, going forward, looking at continue replacing the old paper and pen systems. We have a lot of inspection sheets still. Certain things that require signature, now with the signature boxes that are available on the iPhones, iPads, Windows phones, we really don't need that paper anymore. And then integration with our plant computer systems. The PI Historian, right now there's no automatic data logging. So once we get that communication set up, secured, and the old server installed and then subsequently replaced with a new server, that's going to save more time and also at the same time prevent loss of information. The CMMS I talked about, we're looking at going to main saver and the integration that's going to happen there. Daily report database. Right now we have a sheet of paper that prints out, and then the guys type in that information into our database. There's no reason for that, and it's just another chance for information to get missed. Mobile round software. Again, like I said, we're looking at going for more of an exception-based reporting. So we haven't quite decided if we're going to do that on the front end or the back end. Whether it's going to be done after the information is collected and then sent out, or if we're going to send it into a PI Historian via Opralog or via some other means, and then send that out. And then incident reporting software, which is actually a new corporate initiative. We're going to have web-based incident reporting, so any kind of trips, any kind of exceedances, first aid incidents, all that's going to be handled through there. And that's basically everything. Does anybody have any questions? Well, thank you.
Questions?